Hi everyone. So today we're going to be looking at a couple of things. Firstly, we're going to be trying out using a tube amplifier, a 120 watt tube head with virtual guitar preamps, and we're going to be looking in depth at using some of the Thermionik plugins instead of the preamp that you usually get in a tube amp. So maybe you can use this to try out a new kind of live setup. Or maybe you can just use it in the studio to replace certain parts of gear that you don't have, but without losing that real speaker feel, that real tube amp feel. So let's have a look. So in front of me today is my Peavey Windsor 120 watt head. Now to get started, this is running into the preamp on the high gain channel with pretty much everything at 12 o'clock. The preamp volume is about 6 out of 12. Yeah, bass, middle and treble are all roughly neutral. So's master volume, presence and resonance. And it sounds a bit like this. Very classic rock, very 70s. I like it. Yeah, anyway. What's different about this already is that I'm actually plugged into a DI box, which is off to my side, and I'm not actually directly connected to the amp at all. What's happening is the DI is being recorded into the PC and is being sent straight out through another hardware output to a reamp box, which is sat on top of the amp. And what that means is if I hit stop and play back straight away now on the amp, it's going to sound exactly the same over and over and over if I keep playing that DI back, which means I can then tweak the settings as much as I like on the amp and it will sound exactly the same. Because I've had a problem before where if I'm running directly into an amp, then if I use a reamp, they sound slightly different from each other, just enough to really annoy me. So I'm kind of starting as I mean to go on. Now, this is just how the preamp sounds on its own, but we're not going to use this. This is just to give you a kind of a bass idea. This kind of... One of the limitations of a Peavey Windsor, it's a lot like kind of a Marshall Plexi or a JTM45. It's got one channel. It doesn't have clean and distorted, it has that sound. Maybe I can have a little less gain on it, maybe I can have a little more gain on it, but it's that sound and that's all I get. And the problem there is it's the preamp, because the preamp was designed to do one thing and one thing well, and that's fine, but it's strapped to a 120 watt EL34 tube set, which is blasting out of my Zilla Fatboy 212 in there, as it always does. I love the Zilla 4x12. Go away! And what I want to try is, seeing as I'm reamping anyway, why not try a VST preamp through a real power amp and a real speaker? So let's try that right now. So I'm going to do a quick cut and a transition, and we're going to change the wiring on the amp. So I've switched over to the effect return on the amp, and if I play with nothing apart from me going straight into the amp, I get a very kind of dull, boring sound. So let's look at the first Thermionik amp that I pulled up, which is the Marshland 800, which is a Marshall JCM 800. So I turn this on. I quickly flicked into the options and turned off the power amp because we already have a power amp going on. We don't want to double stack them, it doesn't quite sound right. And I made sure the levels were okay, because that probably doesn't make a difference with no power amp on. And it sounds like this. how about that? Sounds pretty similar to me. I mean, they're not the same, and it's actually quite difficult to debate whether the Thermionik sounds more like a JCM 800 than the actual Peavey Windsor, but they're pretty close. I mean, that's the JCM 800. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to bypass that. And this is where it starts to get really clever, because we've got a 100 odd watt power section strapped to a cabinet. Let's try a different preamp. Let's try one of my favourite preamps, which is the Mesa Dual Rectifier 2-channel on Orange Modern. So let's see how this sounds. We can already hear there's plenty of hiss. To me, that sounds pretty close to the original. I mean, it's probably not exactly the same, but considering I'm blasting through a 100 watt head, like I keep saying, considering I don't own a mid-90s 2-channel dual rectifier, I think I'm getting pretty close with this kind of thing. I mean, I've turned the bass down as you would, and I don't need to change the presence because the amp I can set the presence on. But with the bass down, maybe even a little more gain, let's try the red modern channel. That low end just responds properly because it's feeding that low end into the power section. I think I've found a magic bullet. I think I'll be doing more of this from now on. Let's bypass that and try a different one. Let's go Psycho A, which you would get no prizes for guessing, is a Peavey 5150. So gain down, mids, treble, no power amp. Sounds pretty good to me. I might need to boost, so what I'll do is I'll turn on the TSE Audio 808 and add myself a tube screamer into the tone. Which I have actually got a real tube screamer, but as soon as it's in digital I can switch that on and off, which is something I'll talk about in another video, is turning all of these on and off and automating them either with a foot pedal or as part of the song, so that you can do this and basically replace an Axe effects with an entire live rig based on this kind of thing. So with the 808 on, this is now kind of lost some low end and it's going to give me that big. Okay, so what I'm going to do is now I'm going to record for you and play back to back at the end. I'm going to record the original preamp in the Peavey Windsor, double tracked on a rhythm. Then I'm going to use all of these amps and reamp the same settings and do them as an A/B so you can hear the Peavey Windsor and then all of these Thermionik models. I'm not going to do every single one, I'll just stick to JSM 800, dual rectifier, and the 5150. And I'll probably do a separate kind of thing if people ask for cleans. I will do this for rhythm and for solos as well. I'll put the virtual tube screamer in front of all of them, including the Windsor, because the way that I'm reamping and DIing, I can use a virtual 808 in front of the real preamp so that it's not kind of spoiling the test. It's the same boost. So there you go. So lessons to learn from this. Tube preamps can be overrated, at least in terms of being able to switch them out. Definitely, I think using a tube power amp and the cabinet particularly is the most important thing. So here we go. So there you have it. I hope you found this useful. If you did, please get the like button pressed, and please subscribe to the channel. That's really important to us. Consider supporting us on Patreon, because we're trying to move into doing this more of a full-time thing. The Patreon link is going to be in the description. I can't thank you all enough for subscribing and watching. So I'm Adam Steele for the Hot Pole Studios, and I'll see you soon. Thank you.